فقال يا أمه إني أشم إنك رائحة طيبة كان رائحة جدي رسول الله فقلت نعم إن جد يا تحت الكساء فأقبل الحسن نحو الكساء وقال السلام عليك يا جده يا رسول الله أتأذن لي أن أدخل معك تحت الكساء فقال وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا صاحب الحوض قد أذنت لك فدخل معه تحت الكساء فما كانت إلا ساعة وإذا بولد الحسين قد أقبل وقال السلام عليك يا أمه فقلت وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا قرة عيني وسمرة فؤادي فقال لي يا أمه إني أشم إنك رائحة طيبة كان رائحة جدي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله فقلت نعم إن جدك وأخاك تحت الكساء فدنا الحسين نحو الكساء وقال السلام عليك يا جده السلام عليك يا من اختاره الله أتأذن لي أن أكون معكما تحت الكساء فقال وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا شافع أمتي قد أذنت لك فدخل معه تحت الكساء فأقبل عند ذلك أبو الحسن علي بن أبي طالب وقال السلام عليك يا بنت رسول الله فقلت وعليك السلام يا أبا الحسن ويا أمير المؤمنين فقال يا فاطمة إني أشم إنك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة أتى أخي وابني أمير رسول الله فقلت نعم ومع ولديك تحت الكساء فأقبل علي نحو الكساء وقال السلام عليك يا رسول الله أتأذن لي أن أكون معكم تحت الكساء قال له وعليك السلام يا أخي ويا وسيي وخليفتي وصاحب اللواء قد أذنت لك فدخل علي تحت الكساء ثم أتيت نحو الكساء وقلت السلام عليك يا أباته يا رسول الله أتأذن لي أن أكون معكم تحت الكساء قال وعليك السلام يا بنتي ويا بزعتي قد أذنت لك فدخلت تحت الكساء فلما اكتملنا جميعا تحت الكساء خاز أبي رسول الله وطار في الكساء وأومأ بيده اليمنى إلى السماء وقال لهم إنه أولئك أهل بيتي وخاصتي وهامتي لحمهم لحمي ودموهم دمي يؤلموني ما يؤلمهم ويحزنوني ما يحزنهم أنا حرب لمن حاربهم وسلم لمن سالمهم وعدو لمن آدمهم ومحب لمن فاجعل صلواتك وبركاتك ورحمتك وغفرانك رضوانك وعليهم وأذهب عنهم رجسا وطهرهم تطهيرا. فقال الله عز وجل يا ملائكتي ويسكان سماواتي إني ما خلقت سماء مبنية ولا أرضا مدهية ولا قمرا منيرا ولا شمسا مضيئة ولا فلك يدور ولا بحر يجري ولا فلك يسري إلا في محبتي هؤلاء الخمسة الذين هم تحت الكساء. فقال أمين جبرائيل يا ربي ومن تحت الكساء؟ فقال عز وجل هم أهل بيت نبوتي ومعدن رسالتي هم فاطمة وأبوها وبلوها وبنوها.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
فقال جبرائيل يا ربي أتأذن لي أن أهبط إلى الأرض ليكون معهم سادسا؟ فقال الله نعم قد أذنت لك. فهبط الأمين جبرائيل وقال السلام عليك يا رسول الله. العلي الأعلى يقضيك السلام ويخص بالتحية والإكرام ونقول لك وعزتي وجلالي إني ما خلقت سماء مبنية ولا أرض مدهية ولا قمرا منيرا ولا شمس مضيئة ولا فلك يدور ولا بحر يجري ولا فلك يسري إلا لأجلكم وما جبتكم وقد أذن لي أن أدخل معكم فهل تأذن لي يا رسول الله؟ فقال رسول الله الله وعليك السلام يا أمين وحي الله إنه نعم قد أذنت لك. فدخل جبرائيل معها تحت الكساء فقال لي أبي إن الله قد أوحى إليكم يقول إنما يريد الله ليذهب عنكم رجس أهل بيتي ويطهرهم تطهيرا.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
فقال علي لأبي يا رسول الله أخبرني ما لجلوسنا هذا تحت الكساء من الفضل عند الله. فقال النبي والذي بعثني بالحق نبي مصطفاني بالرسالة نجي وما ذكر هذا في محفل من محافل أهل الأرض وفي جميع من شيمهم ميم الرحمة وخفت بهم الملائكة واستغفرت لهم إلا أن علي والله فقابات.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
فقال النبي سني عني والذي بعثني بالحق نبي مصطفاني بالرسالة نجي وما ذكر خابرنا هذا في محافل من محافل أهل الأرض وفيه جميع شيعتنا محبين وفيهم محمون إلا وفرج الله عما ولا مغمون إلا وكشف الله عما ولا تعلم حاجتي إلا وكزال الله حاجاته فقال علي إذا والله فزنا وسوئدنا وكذلك شيعتنا وسوئدنا في الدنيا والآخرة ورب الكعبة
صلی علی محمد وآل محمد. Very good. محمد وآل محمد صلوات. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
ایک مرتبہ اور نعرہ سے بات
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
چند اشعار امام جعفر صادق علیہ السلام کے مدح میں کلام ہے مولانا ذیشان درجوادی صاحب کا ملاحظہ کریں. اللہ کے دو عالم کا ایسا شاہکار امام صادق ہیں. خلاق دو عالم کا ایسا شاہکار امام صادق ہیں. سرکار رسالت کا زندہ کردار امام صادق ہیں. اسلام کے ہر منصب کے لیے اقرار امام صادق ہیں. اور کفر کے ہر مذہب کے لیے انکار امام صادق ہیں. اور کفر کے ہر مذہب کے لیے انکار امام صادق ہیں. قدرت نے عطا کی ہے ان کو پرواز نظر کی وہ طاقت. مذہب کی ہر خدمت کے لیے تیار امام صادق ہیں. مذہب کی ہر ایک خدمت کے لیے تیار امام صادق ہیں. گر دین خدا پر حملہ ہو بن جاتے ہیں یہ مذہب کسی پر. باطل جو اٹھائے سر اپنا تلوار امام صادق ہیں. باطل اٹھائے سر اپنا تلوار امام صادق ہیں. سب اہل ستم ان سے بھاگے ٹھہرا نہ کوئی ان کے آگے. فرار ہیں سارے اہل ستم کرار امام صادق ہیں. فرار ہیں سارے اہل ستم کرار امام صادق ہیں. منصور کا ناصر کوئی نہیں اس رہ کا مسافر کوئی نہیں. اب قافلہ حق کے تنہا سالار امام صادق ہیں. اب قافلہ حق کے تنہا سالار امام صادق ہیں. ایمان کی ہر حکمت ان سے، اسلام کی ہر وسعت ان سے، ہے علم اگر کوئی نقطہ با پر کار امام صادق ہے علم اگر ایک نقطہ با پر کار امام صادق ہے، جو امت حق میں داخل ہو لازم ہے اسے یہ یاد رہے، سردار امام صادق ہے، لازم ہے اسے یہ یاد رہے، سردار امام صادق ہے، مالک سے اگر تصدیق نہیں پھر کوئی بشر صدیق نہیں، اور دہر کی ہر سچائی کا معیار امام صادق ہے، اور دہر کی ہر سچائی کا معیار امام صادق ہے، خلاق دو عالم کا احساس شاہکار امام صادق ہے، سرکار رسالت کا زندہ کردار امام صادق ہے۔
اللہم صلی علی محمد وآل محمد۔ نعرہ صلوات، محمد وآل محمد۔
ایک مرتبہ محمد علیہ
اللہم صلی علی محمد وآل
عین سے عبادت کا سرانجام ہوا، عین سے عین عبادت کا سرانجام ہوا، لام وہ لام کہ جس لام سے اسلام ہوا، لام وہ لام کہ جس لام سے اسلام یہ سیاور ہوئے مشرک بندے کی، یہ سیاور ہوئے مشکل میں ہر ایک بندے کی، صدقے اسلام کے کیا خوب علی نہیں اور کوئی مظہر داور نظر آتا نہیں، بزم میں کل میں دوسرا ہے نظر آتا نہیں، اور کوئی مظہر داور نظر عباس داور نظر جو محمد نے سجایا ہے پروان، جو محمد نے سجایا ہے پروان، نظر آتا نہیں، دل کے اندھوں کو وہی منبر نظر خدا میں دل کو سنبھالا امام، ارے اولاد ذبح ہو گئی آنکھوں کے سامنے، اولاد ذبح ہو گئی آنکھوں کے سامنے، باقر کے لخت دل کو نہ آیا کبھی تاب خدا کے حکم کا تھا سرور کرتا تھا صبر ناصر دین حبیب میرا، دیتا تھا صدمے آنکھوں منصور بے، دیتا تھا صدمے آنکھوں منصور بے، فرعون عصر پھر گیا فخر کلیم، ارے کینا تھا سنگ سخت کو در یتیم، کینا تھا سنگ سخت کو در یتیم سے، رہتی تھی اس کو شام و سحر فکر قتل، جلتا تھا آفتاب امامت سے روسیا، تھی آرزو کے خانہ ہے در ہو پھر تباہ، ہو بے امام خادم سلطان دی بنا، ہو بے امام خادم سلطان دی بنا، سادات مبتلا بالائے عظیم، جعفر ہو قاتل موسیٰ کاظم یتیم، جعفر ہو قاتل موسیٰ کاظم ظالم کو بے گناہ سے منظور تھی اجازت تازہ دے کے کر دیتا تھا، تیغ ستم نکالتا تھا جب آنا زور دعائے امام، چل سکتا تھا نہ زور دعائے امام، ارے حق کے ولی کا دشمن جانی تھا روسیا، سب آفتوں سے بچ کے وطن میں جب آئے، وہ ظلم ہو گیا کہ مدینہ ہوا انگور میں امام کو دلوایا زہر، انگور میں امام کو دلوایا زہر، سرد ریاض دی کا عجب حال ہو گیا، سر سبز باغ دین کا پامال ہو گیا، بے چین دل تھے حضرت باقر کی یاد میں۔
Tonight We observe the Shahadat of our sixth Imam, Imam Jafar as-Sadiq alayhi salam. The sponsor for tonight's Majlis is Sister Aliza Fatima. Please join me in reciting Surah Fatiha for their marhumeens as well as yours. Bismillah. Now that the COVID-19 regulations have been sort of thinned down, it is good to see people sort of attending the majalises, and inshallah we hope to see more people during the Shabi Juma programs and also Juma Salat. We continue to sort of send out announcements of any other programs that we may have in the upcoming days. So if you're not getting any emails, please let me know so that I can sort of add you to our list. Let us also remember people who are in need of dua, who are sick. I understand Dr. Jafar is in the hospital, so please join me in reciting this dua to Shifa for Jafar Bhai and all those who are sick and weak. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Amma yujibul mustarra wa yashkur. 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 May I also request people who are sitting to observe the social distance. I know we have to trim it down to 3 feet, so please at least maintain that distance so we'll get some COVID-19 compliance. With that, I respectfully request Sheikh Bilal Husain to explain it. Sheikh Bilal.
اسلوب امام زمان بلندتر صلوات نعرہ دیگر نعرہ صلوات نعرہ حیدری
سورة المباركة الفاتحة. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. الحمد لله رب العالمين، ثم الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم محمد. وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين، واللعنة على أعدائهم أجمعين من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد، قال إمامنا جعفر الصادق عليه السلام: نفس المهموم لظلمنا تسبيح، وهمنا لنا عبادة، وكتمان سرنا جهاد في سبيل الله. ثم قال إمامنا: يجب أن يكتب هذا الحديث بالذهب. صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. Tonight, in a brief discussion, we have the responsibility to discuss the Shahadat of our sixth Imam. Us, as a people, are given the title by this Imam as Ja'fari. To understand the importance of this Imam, there's no one majlis that can encapsulate the responsibility that was executed by this Imam. But if we were to put it into perspective, Hadith is one of the tools that we use from that time until today to know how to execute our religion and what are our responsibilities that Allah has demanded of us. Hadith for the Shia is a treasure that is more vast than any school of thought, because while other schools of thought only take from Rasulullah, we take from all of Ali Muhammad. In this treasure that we possess are approximately 65,000 ahadith. You and I are known as Ja'fari today because more than half of those come from Imam Jafar as-Sadiq. Meaning that our halal and haram, our understanding of our wajib and mustahab and makruh and all of these categories, they are incomplete had it not been for the efforts of this sixth Imam of ours. And you have to look at history to understand how great this accomplishment is on his behalf, how severe the pressure it was on his time. When you look at history, one of the important points that you'll notice is no ma'soom after Imam as-Sadiq was buried in the city of Medina. Do you know what that means? That means the pressure and the abuse that was laid on Ahlul Bayt was so much that they were not allowed to stay in their home. They were taken away from the Prophet, they were separated from the people. Had it not been for the efforts of this Imam and his work that was demonstrated to us that after his Shahadat in Masjid-e-Ali, there would be 900 scholars who would sit and say, قَالَ أُسْتَادُنَا جَعْفَرَ الصَّادِقِ عَلَيْهِ السَّلَامِ, and teach what Imam Sadiq taught, that today you and I would be the truest of orphans of Ali Muhammad. We would have no way of knowing what it was that Allah wants from us or how to approach it. This is the effort of the Imam, which is why the majlis of Imam as-Sadiq, the Shahadat of Imam as-Sadiq for us is azim. It's an important event. It's something in our houses, in our towns, in our masajid. The gatherings should be great, that had it not been for the efforts of this ma'soom, what orphans we would have been, and what effort of this Imam that we are known as Ja'fari till today. When you look at the life and lessons of Imam as-Sadiq, you can take from any aspect, and you'll hear lectures on his view in tafsir, his view in akhlaq, his view in aqaid, his view in teaching us about Karbala, his view in teaching us about fiqh, his view in teaching us. There is no door of knowledge that our Imam did not open for not just us, but humanity. But there are 4 hadith we'll mention tonight. 3 that are the final wasiyah of our Imam, and 1 that stands out amongst all of the other narrations of the Imam. Not to say it is the most special, but it has some special characteristics that make it different from other hadith. And that's the hadith that we began our discussion with today. There is a narration from our 6th Imam that is narrated by authentic narrators. Aban ibn Taghlib, who was one of the close companions of our 6th Imam, narrates this hadith. Sheikh al-Mufid has narrated in his Kitab al-Amani. Sheikh al-Qulayni, Fiqh al-Islam, has narrated in Al-Kafi. And the importance of this hadith, I'll share with you as we come to the end, because the words of the Imam himself are something that tell us this is something significant. Our Imam Ja'far ibn Muhammad as-Sadiq alayhi salam explains, Ya Aba, he says then, Ya Aba, nafasul mahmum li dhulmina tasbih. The begrieved sigh for the oppression we, the Ahlul Bayt, suffer is tasbih. This is the first part. There are three parts to this. The Imam is teaching us and educating us that, O mu'mineen, when you remember our affair, when you are grieved by what has befallen us, Ahlul Bayt, when you revive our affairs, that begrieved sigh, that breath that you take in that state of sorrow, next to Allah, it holds the weight of tasbih of Allah. How strange is it? You have to understand that this hadith is something, the level of where Imam is placing these statuses is something unusual, to put it simply. There's only one point in this life that we possess where Allah has given us the characteristic that our breath is tasbih. Right? There's 1 month, Shahr Ramadan, where Rasulullah explained to us, An-nifasukum fihi at-tasbih. Your breath in this month is the equivalent of tasbih. The importance of that month of Ramadan is such that our fourth Imam used to say, if you knew the mercy you are surrounded in the month of Ramadan, you would wish every day was Ramadan. And here Imam as-Sadiq is raising the status of understanding and thinking about and remembering the oppression of Ali Muhammad. And he says, if you remember our oppression, nafasul mahmoom, that begrieved sigh that you take, that breath that you take, thinking about us, Allah raises that sigh to the level of tasbih. Secondly, Imam continues to Aban, he says, وَهَمُّ لَنَا وَهَمُّهُ لَنَا عِبَادَةً. Ham in this case is sometimes translated to anxiety or grief. And the Imam says, هَمُّ لَنَا عِبَادَةً. That grief or anxiety for our condition is worship. It's not strange to believe this in the fact that many actions can be considered ibadah. However, there's another understanding of what this phrase means. Hammulana himmatu alayna. That your exerting of effort in following us is ibadah. That you're putting yourself and striving to follow our commands for Allah, and next to Allah is ibadah. When you learn about the Imam, when you try to put his practices into your life, when you go and you listen to the hadith of the Imam, the life of the Imam is explaining your himma for us, your work towards us, your striving for us is something that Allah views as ibadah. The worship of Allah is accomplished by following His awliya. The third point the Imam makes, وَكِتْمَانُ سِرِّنَا جِهَادٌ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. Kitmanu sirrina refers to, kitman is to hide, sirrina, our secrets. The one who hides our secrets, it's as if he has done jihad in the way of Allah. You see, our sixth Imam, he taught us many of the fadail of Ali Muhammad. He taught many of the secrets of Ali Muhammad to the mu'mineen. But he also explained that not all of our secrets are for all people. Not all of our affairs should be disclosed in front of all people. That it may be an affair that you love about us, that you know about and you understand. To us, for us, that love that you have for us is something that brings you closer to us by knowing this. But it may take someone else away from us. So be careful that you don't disclose our affairs to all people. Be careful that you are conscientious that what is right to be discussed is discussed in the right location. The similitude of this is taken, for example, when we take someone who's in middle school and high school and put him in a 300 level college class of chemistry. A child says, I know chemistry, I took chemistry in high school. You put him in a 300 level class of chemistry, what happens? He says, Mother, this isn't chemistry, I don't know what this is, but I don't understand. Because he doesn't have the preparation to appreciate what's being presented to him. Wow. The same is true of some of the affairs of Ahlul Bayt. That those who cannot appreciate them, when we share them with those people, instead of being guided to Ahlul Bayt, they turn away from Ahlul. Even, for example, when we look at the life of our seventh Imam Musa ibn Jafar al-Kadhim alayhi salam, It is narrated that it was either his cousin or his close companion who disclosed his affairs in front of Harun that led to the imprisonment of Imam Musa ibn Jafar. It wasn't a lie. It may not have been a lie. But it was the disclosing of the secrets of Ali Muhammad that led to their shahadah. Imam Sadiq explains, he says that you, by learning our secrets, it doesn't mean that they belong in the public sphere. There's actually a very interesting statement, a very interesting hadith that's attributed to Isa ibn Maryam. Nabi Isa ibn Maryam, Prophet Jesus alayhi salam. There's a very interesting hadith that's narrated by Shahid al-Thani in a book called Munyatul Murid, where he says, لا تعلق القلادة في أعناق الخنازير. Do not place expensive necklaces in the necks of pigs. Ahlariun asked, Ya Rasulullah, O Nabi Allah, what do you mean by this? He says, the knowledge that we give you is like gold. The knowledge that we give you is these jewels and this beauty. لا تعلق القلادة في أعناق الخنازير is referring to that this gold and this jewelry that we give you, this wealth that we give you, it does not belong with someone who does not appreciate and understand what we have given. Be careful that you don't give our wealth and gold and bring it to the wrong place and place it there for someone to take advantage of. This is an important lesson. At the end of these 3 points, نفس المحموم لظلمنا تسبيح وهم لنا عبادة وكتمان سرنا جهاد في سبيل الله. Abad ibn Taghlib says that after the Imam finished these 3 lines, he said to me, وَوَجِبَ أَنْ يَكْتُبَ هَذَا الْحَدِيثَ بِالذَّهْبِ. Imam as-Sadiq, we just said, narrated over 30,000 hadith. Yet at the end of this hadith, he says, I say to you, it is mandatory that this hadith be written in gold. Written in gold. Not memorized, not repeated, written in gold. For a teacher who had 4,000 students and taught thousands upon thousands of lessons, he makes this statement, it is mandatory for you to write this. Yajib, wajib alayh. It is mandatory for you to write this in gold. One of the interpretations of why the Imam would take such severe steps to point this out and insist that this be written in gold is to say that through this hadith we learn, no matter how time may separate us from the Imam is never separate. That if you want to know how to get to Allah, never separate yourself from Ahlul Bayt, because whether you mention the difficulties of Ahlul Bayt, the lessons of Ahlul Bayt, or learn the secrets of Ahlul Bayt, all of them are counted amongst the ibadat of Allah and bring you closer to Allah. That in our time where people are trying to separate us from Ali Muhammad, the hadith of Imam as-Sadiq introduces and insists that don't go away from us, come closer to us. There is no easier path to Allah than through us, Ali Muhammad. Salawat ala Muhammad. Allah gives us tawfiq in life. Maybe we'll have more time to discuss further how it is that this is implemented and how it is that we see the path of Ali Muhammad through these words. But for now, the pointing in this direction, inshallah, is sufficient for us. Along with all of the statements of Imam as-Sadiq, at the end of his life, there are 3 statements that he makes, 3 important lessons that he insists upon. The first is given when one of his companions comes to see him in the condition after he has been poisoned and sees him in a state of difficulty and weeps over the condition of the Imam. The Imam says to him, why are you crying? He says, Ya Rasulullah, I'm crying because of the difficulty of my separation from you. You are my master, my teacher. I have benefited from you. I have learned from you. You have taught me many things. And now at the idea of seeing you in difficulty and that you will be leaving me, I cannot help but be overcome by grief. In this instance, Imam as-Sadiq makes a statement. He says, فَإِنَّ الْمُؤْمِنُ إِذَا أَمْلَكَ الشَّرْكِ وَالْغَرْبِ خَيْرًا لَهُ فَيَشْكُرْ لِلَّهِ وَإِنْ كَانَ إِذَا يُبْتَلَى كَانَ خَيْرًا لَهُ فَاصْبِرْ وَإِذَا صَبَرَ يُؤْجَرْ. Imam makes a simple statement. He says to him, he says, for a mu'min, if Allah gave him everything that exists on this earth between the east and the west, it would be good for him. Therefore, he should thank Allah. And for a mu'min, if Allah was to have him mubtala, meaning overcome with difficulties, فَهُوَ خَيْرٌ لَهُ. That too is good for him. So he should be patient, and Allah would reward him for that patience. Imam as-Sadiq's statement for the mu'mineen in this is to know that don't be overcome by grief and difficulty, and don't be overcome by pleasure and happiness. Allah has given khair in all affairs, and you should appreciate the khair He has given you. And if you appreciate the khair He gives you in goodness and in difficulty, that act becomes rewarded with Allah. Do not be easily overcome neither by happiness nor by excessive grief. The second statement of our sixth Imam at the time of his death is that our Imam calls one of his companions close, Sulaim, and he says, Ya Sulaim, take this, and he gives him an amount of money. The amount of money is 70 dinar. 70 dinar, to explain, 1 dinar is 1.5 grams of gold. Over 70 grams of gold. 70, how much is that? 70? 105 grams of gold. Imam hands to Sulaim and says, Sulaim, take this and give this to my cousin Hassan al-Aftas. Hassan al-Aftas was one of the relatives, distant cousins of Imam as-Sadiq, not too distant, but from the family, who at one point in time raised the sword and tried to kill Imam as-Sadiq. Sulaim complains, he says, Ya Rasulullah, he tried to kill you. He raised the sword on you. You want me to give him 105 grams of gold? Imam as-Sadiq says, Oh Sulaim, don't you want me to be amongst those who Allah, when He commanded that the Sila Rahim should be kept, that I was one who kept that Sila Rahim? Don't you want me to be amongst those that Allah, who fills the command of Allah, where the hadith of even our Prophet says, Sil ar-Rahim walau yaqtu anhu. Keep the connections of the womb even if the other person tries to cut them off from you. Stay connected to your family. Don't let anyone break the relations of the womb, of the family. There are 5 quick ways where we can take a look at 5 different levels that we can look at keeping of Sila Rahim. The first is one themselves goes to visit and comes to their family and visits them. The second is that you provide some benefit and provide some goodness and kindness to them. Whether I send them gifts, whether I send them wealth, whether I send them anything of their need, it's a way of me keeping relations with them. The third is that I remove some difficulty from them. I pay off their debts. I prevent the difficulty from befalling them. I find them in a hard position. I loan them my car. I give them assistance. The fourth way is the most easiest of way, that simply by some relations we keep by saying salam to them. And if we can't say salam to them by even giving a cup of water to some people that we have relation with, it's recognized as keeping silatul rahim. Never let someone dictate to you which relationship you will keep. You will dictate what relationships you keep. And if Allah has mandated something to be connected, then we will not be the ones who break it. If my Imam can keep relations with a man who raised the sword on him, how difficult it is for me to keep a relationship with someone who raised the voice at him? The Imam is teaching this important lesson before his death. Don't let the relations of the womb be broken. Allah has commanded that they be joined. Don't separate them. The third lesson comes to us from the wife of Imam as-Sadiq and the mother of our seventh Imam, Bibi Hamida. Bibi Hamida says that when my Imam was coming and going from consciousness, at one point in time he said to me, collect everyone that I have a relationship with. bring to me every relation that is here that you can find that is connected to me. Sayyidah Hamida says that she says, I went and I gathered everyone, even the neighbors, because they had a connection to the Imam. When they all gathered, when the Imam came to, he made one short statement of his wasiyah, and after that, they were all free to leave. This one statement the Imam makes to everyone that's connected to him, لا تنالوا شفاعتنا مستخفا بالصلاة. That our shifa will not reach anyone who is mustakhifan bis-salat, who takes their prayers lightly. Now, shortage of time, I'll mention this to you very briefly. We'll mention a couple of branches to this. There's different interpretations. What does this mean? Some people said, لا تنالوا شفاعتنا. The shifa of Imam as-Sadiq, shifa of Ali Muhammad is known. That on the day of judgment, there is none who will be able to enter the gardens of paradise had it not been for the assistance of Rasulullah. Mustakhifan lis-salat is where the debate comes. What does it mean when Imam says mustakhifan lis-salat? Takhfif is someone who takes something lightly. Some mufassirin came and they said that, or some ulama have said, this means that one who doesn't pray, doesn't pay attention to prayer. La yantabih as-salat. The problem with that is that Allah in the Quran, even He warns the people who are prayerful. When Allah says in the Quran, فَوَيْلٌ لِلْمُصَلِّينَ الَّذِينَ هُمْ عَنْ صَلَاتِهِمْ سَاهُونَ. Allah is warning in the Quran that there are those amongst you, وَيْلٌ لِلْمُصَلِّينَ, woe be to you, O prayerful people, musallin. That there is a category of people who Allah is warning, though they are already prayerful. He says, you're prayerful, but you take your prayer sahun lightly. So if Allah is warning the people who pray but don't take their prayer seriously, then certainly when Imam as-Sadiq is saying mustakhifan bis-salah, he doesn't mean someone less than that. He means someone at least at the level that Allah has addressed as well too. Mustakhifan bis-salat, in its depth, if we look at it, is anyone who takes their prayer as if it is nothing important in their day. Sometimes they pray on time, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they offer their prayer, sometimes they won't. Sometimes they pray or they prioritize other things over their prayer, or they take a look at what their responsibility is. I'll make time for prayer. In short, this mustakhifan bis-salat, the final statements of our Imam are to warn, not you and I. You and I, the importance is even more. He collected all those of his relatives, those who had spent their life with the Imam, those who considered themselves the friends of the Imam, those who considered themselves the family of the Imam. And he warned them that my shifa will not help you if you take your prayer lightly. Yeah, but what about us? We never saw the Imam. We can't even imagine that we could call ourselves the friend of the Imam. For us, the matter is more serious. That if we want shifa of Ahlul Bayt, we have to ensure that our prayers are taken care of. One of the important points to mention in this night is the Masa'ib of Imam as-Sadiq. Many times we don't think of the difficulties that my Imam went through. My Imam lived his life through five of the Khulafa of Banu Umayyah and 2 of the Khulafa of Banu Abbas, the last of whom was Mansur al-Dawaniqi Mal'un, who took his time to torture and abuse my Imam. It said that Mansur, when he would be angry at Imam as-Sadiq, he would call for him and say, bring Sadiq to me in the worst of ways. And then they would come into the house of Imam as-Sadiq in the middle of the night and say, Mansur has called you. And when Imam would say, may I take my cloak? They would say no. May I take my amama? They would say no. Imam would say, I am barefoot. May I take my shoes? And they would say no. They would put a rope in the hands of Imam as-Sadiq and drag him through the streets of Medina, where they said, we remember the time of Ali ibn Abi Talib, when he was pulled through the streets of Medina. We saw Imam as-Sadiq in the same difficulty. When they would take Imam as-Sadiq to the palace of Mansur, they would not let him enter. He would stand outside. A servant would come and call to Mansur, Sadiq has been brought to your door. Mansur would say, leave him there. He would come and say, Sadiq is barefoot standing outside of your door. Do you permit him to enter from under the sun? No. He would come sometime later. We see as-Sadiq raising one foot in discomfort and then switching it to the other foot. Do you permit him to enter? No, Imam as-Sadiq's age at this time was 65 years of age. He was the one who had the longest life of all of the Imams, but he was treated in such a way that there was no respect for him. When he was returned from the palace of Mansur, where they said this happened over 5 times, once they lit a fire in the house of Imam as-Sadiq. Imam as-Sadiq was then at this age, in his tired age, running after the women and children and gathering them as they were being surrounded by the fire. One khatib, he says, I imagine there were children in the house of Imam as-Sadiq. He had small daughters. Can you imagine that daughter who wakes in the night? A fire is set in the house. Her mothers, her aunts, her sisters are running and screaming. The child raises from the bed and looks for comfort and begins to weep. Hi, Imam as-Sadiq was there for those children. What of the children in Karbala for whom none were there? It said that Imam as-Sadiq, after this event, when the Shia came to see him, they found him crying. His back was bent, his head was between his knees, and he wept bitterly. They said, Yabna Rasulullah, Shahadat is the norm of your house. Difficulty is the norm of your house. This isn't the first time they lit your houses on fire. Why are you crying? He says, I cry for my aunt Zainab in the haram of. They were left alone there. There was none there for them to help them. My tears now are not for me, but for them. Eventually, the sweat of death overcame Imam as-Sadiq. They said his eyes began to close. His hands opened and closed. His breath became shallow. Imam as-Sadiq became shaheed. Imam Musa Kazim must have taken his head in his lap. His sons must have surrounded him. But hi, Hussein, where was your Akbar when you were shaheed? He had his spear in his chest. Why was your Asghar not by you? His blood had been spilled from his throat. Where was your Abbas, O Hussein? They say final jumla. They say that when this janazah left the house of Imam as-Sadiq, one of the small daughters of Imam as-Sadiq woke up from her sleep and complained. She says, where is my Baba? I want to see him. They replied that your Baba passed away. She says, no, I must go to my Baba. They said, he's gone to Baqi to be buried. He's left. They said, this small child ran from the house. The women ran after this child. When they found the child, Imam Musa Kazim had come and taken her in his lap. They complained, oh Musa Kazim, for this child, you left the janazah of your father and came back for her. Imam Musa Kazim said, it is not right for the daughters of our house to see such a condition. Imam Musa Kazim, were you thinking the Maidan of Karbala and Shami Ghariba when Sakina came looking and Abu Abdullah called ilayya? Or were you thinking of the Sultan of Sham when Sakina held the head of her father? What ibn Hussein.
ये मातों सरदार है और इससे सिवार है ये मातम सरदार है और ये صدا رہے اور اس سے یہ فرش عزائے صبت نبی تا محشر بچھا رہے یہ ماتم صدا رہے اور اس سے سوا رہے یہ ماتم صدا رہے اور اس سے سوا رہے کتنی اٹھے ظلمت کی گھٹا کتنی اٹھے ظلمت کی گھٹا ہو کتنی ہی تاریک فضا ہو کتنی ہی تاریک فضا بجھنے نہیں پائے شمع غار کتنے ہی اٹھے طوفان مگر روشن یہ دیا رہے یہ ماتم صدا رہے اور اس سے صدا رہے ایک نسل ہٹے ایک نسل بڑھے ایک نسل ہٹے ایک نسل بڑھے ایک شمع بجھے ایک شمع جلے ایک شمع بجھے ایک شمع جلے شبیر کا ماتم ہوتا رہے نسلاً بعد نسل یوں ہی جاری سلسلہ رہے یہ ماتم صدا رہے اور اس سے سوا رہے ہم پلتے رہے طوفانوں میں ہم پلتے رہے طوفانوں میں اور بہتے رہے خون کی دھاروں میں بہتے رہے خون کی دھاروں میں چنوائے گئے دیواروں میں خود مٹ گئے بانی ظلم مگر ہم اہل عزا رہے یہ ماتم صدا رہے اور اس سے سوا رہے غم خار شہے ابرار ہے ہم غم خار شہے ابرار ہے ہم باطل کے لیے تلوار ہے ہم باطل کے لیے تلوار ہے ہم تاریخ کا وہ کردار ہے ہم مر سکتے ہیں مٹ سکتے نہیں ذہنوں میں ذرا رہے یہ ماتم صدا رہے اور اس سے سوا رہے سوکھے ہوئے لب حل من کی صدا سوکھے ہوئے لب حل من کی صدا تاریخ بھلا سکتی ہے بھلا تاریخ بھلا سکتی ہے بھلا کیا عالم غربت ہے بخدا ہے کون ستم سہ کر اتنے راضی بارضا رہے یہ ماتم صدا رہے اور اس سے سوا رہے دل سے ہاں اہل عطا دل سے ہاں اہل عطا اور موڑ سے تابا کر بلا ہر موڑ سے تابا کر بلا روشن رکھو ایک ایک ذرہ ہر آنے والے حر کے لیے یہ رستہ کھلا رہے ماتم صدا رہے اور اس سے سوا رہے شہ کہتے تھے اصغر نہ رہے کہتے تھے اصغر نہ رہے عباس و علی اکبر نہ رہے عباس و علی اکبر نہ رہے
بہنوں کی میرے چادر نہ رہے، شبیر کا سر ہو تنز سے جدا، دین مصطفیٰ رہے، یہ ماتم سدا رہے اور اس سے سوا رہے، یہ ماتم سدا رہے اور اس سے سوا رہے۔